Hey y'all, it's Zack, the legal tech advisor here at Lawyerist. Today I'd like to talk to you about AXELgo's ability to preserve metadata when sharing files. Recently, I sat down with Rob Hook, a national forensics expert that AXEL enlisted to help them build the product. Have a listen to my discussion with him and see what you think. Yeah, so I think first the e-discovery and getting documents in a digital fashion is obviously it's here. We're used to it. We're starting, but I don't know that everybody is necessarily as comfortable with it as they'd like to be. But I think it's important to note that we're not just talking about big giant e-discovery cases. You know, e-discovery and the metadata and all of the digital forensics is important in simple family law cases as well. Um,
Oh,
so
absolutely. Absolutely. From the largest firm to the smallest, we're all going to the same place and we're all held to the same standards. And metadata is just as important as the content of your files sometimes. And if you think about it, metadata is data about your data or information about your files.
right,
And so a nice analogy I like to use is think of metadata as the little things around the fringe of your element, your evidence. So if you think about a criminal case where you're trying to introduce, let's say, a smoking gun,
mm-hmm.
uh, not collecting the metadata is the equivalent to submitting the gun as evidence, but cleaning it off very well first. You would never do that in a criminal case, and in every other case, sanitizing your files by not including the metadata, or worse, spoliating it, in other words, changing it,
Right,
uh, makes just as much sense as wiping the gun off first.
right. Well, and in a time where we didn't worry about or didn't necessarily think about the metadata and weren't as savvy with it, maybe not having that metadata, who created this, when they created it, when they edited it, things like that. Maybe that information wasn't as important, but now it's pretty simple to have on a PDF file, on a Microsoft Word file. And I think that opposing counsel, if not quite often, I mean, if not every time, quite often is going to look at that in order to even authenticate it, to authenticate your information, or just to be able to tell the story of the information.
Absolutely, and that's something that I have, passed on to various attorneys through, CLEs and lunch and learns that I've given. And that is how to spot spoliation, either in your own collections or in opposing counsel's collections,
Right.
using that to your advantage. So it's important not only from the court standpoint, but it's an important strategy too.
Well, so we're talking about metadata here and keeping that metadata attached to your files, because what we're really discussing with AXELgo is this idea of collecting data in a secure way. And you guys have a feature called Secure Fetch that will actually, and you can explain it much better than I can, but will actually go and fetch documents and files and folders and things from your client, from opposing party, in a secure, in smart, reasonable way.
Right, right. Well, Secure Fetch has been around for a while, and it's always been secure, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but we've recently added the forensic capabilities to preserve the metadata, and so now not only do we have this underlying infrastructure, this distributed, encrypted with military grade encryption
Right.
infrastructure, but we've added these forensic tools, forensic capabilities onto it too.
Well, and so this is because when you're doing the secure fetch, the mechanism for doing that, and I've had it explained to me this way, that you're tearing the document apart into little pieces and sending it to different places in order to, and encrypting all of those methods of travel and the document, and then bringing it back together. And it's not necessarily easy, or at least intuitive, to maintain that metadata in that doc. Where does it go? Which piece does it go with? And so having the secure fetch and in some other secure fetches, that metadata goes away. And so you get the document, but you don't have, like you said, the story of the document.
That's true. The majority of the methods out there that people would normally use to collect files, to collect evidence, would change that metadata.
Mm-hmm.
So you would end up saying that, if you open your document today as part of the collection, well, you just changed your last access date. Or if you copy it from one system to another, you change your created date. So that gets lost.
Mm-hmm.
There are tools out there that can collect that information, in a forensically sound manner, but they're always made for guys like me, for the expert,
Right.
to be sent out there, and collect the data in person. And that's just not the way it is done anymore. It's, even before the pandemic, we were heading this direction, because it's just not proportional to the case. It's too expensive and too complicated to make sense.
Right. Well, I like to think about if you're in a divorce case and you're trying to collect information from your client, let's say, and it's salacious photos, or it's text messages that you don't want, these are things you absolutely want to maintain attorney-client privilege on, but you also absolutely want to maintain confidentiality. And if this gets out, it's not just a problem with you ethically, it's a massive problem anyway. So you want to have extremely secure mechanisms of transferring this from your client to you, but you still have to have the information to be able to say, listen, this wasn't changed in the system. And so it has to be accessible for, me as a family law attorney in, rural Tennessee.
That's right. And the AXEL system has always had that secure encryption piece, as a fundamental part of the product. And now adding in the forensic piece is just another piece of that puzzle. And it's been made from the beginning for kind of the consumer or the not so technical person to be able to use it. It's web-based. It's very straightforward.
Right.
You don't have to be somebody like me to go collect this information now, which is the way it should be, really.
Right. At this point, we're kind of getting to where we can serve these things up. So I think that lends itself to it. Are you able to demonstrate this for us, or can you show us kind of what it looks like?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I'm going to share my screen here. Let's cross our fingers. All right. Well, we're going to start here at the main login screen. I'm already signed up here. We're just going to sign in. You can sign in with Apple or Google credentials if you want. And here we see the secure fetch, secure storage, and secure sharing options. We're going to deal with secure fetch, which is what an attorney would use. So right now, my role is the attorney. This is the way they would see it. If they wanted to collect information from a custodian, they just go into secure fetch here. And I already have one set up. We're going to create a new secure fetch for you here from the very beginning. So here's our new secure fetch button. We just click on that. We'll give it a name. We'll call it Lawyerist Lives. I need to spell that right, don't I? Lawyerist Live Demo. Okay. We can give it an expiration date here so that if you only want the custodian to be able to send you data for the next few days, you can set this to whatever you want. It's password protected, and we're just going to give it a simple password today. And here's the new feature, include metadata.
Okay.
That's going to collect the metadata, which is primarily there are 3 dates associated with every file on a Windows system. The date the file was created, the date the file was modified, and the date it was last accessed. And by date, I mean date and time, by the way, down to the second.
Right.
So
right.
Those things are often very important in a case. You want to know what was done. You want to know when it was done as well. That's many cases are based on a timeline. So that's important to the litigation. So anyway, you put in this information. You click on create link here. And it creates a link for you. We're just going to copy it for our demo, but you could send it via a whole bunch of different methods. It was Facebook there, email.
Looks like Reddit was there.
Reddit was there, yeah, which is interesting, but it'll do it that way if you want. So
sure.
So now we have a link. And now I'm going to kind of switch roles here. To do that, I'm just going to bring up one of these incognito windows so it doesn't know who I am. I'm going to paste in our link. So this is kind of what the this is kind of what the custodian would see here. They can enter their password.
Okay, and you pasted the link that would have been sent to the custodian in the
Exactly.
URL. Okay.
Right. So generally, you get an email or something, you just click on it, and this, you get the same thing here.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to do get access, and we're going to let it open the AXEL program.
And the custodian doesn't have to have AXELgo. This is them being able to connect with it without having to have some sort of user identification or something like that.
Exactly. So this is all based on the secure fetch link. You see this big ID up here, this great big numeric code. So it's all based on that. You don't have to be a user of AXELgo already. So
okay.
Here we are. You can just drop your files or folders here, and I do have some test files that I've created there. And we'll just grab a few of these here so that we're not taking up too much of your time. And now, let me tell you, for the last 20 years, I've been telling people, when you collect data, do not drag and drop, because that spoliates the data. Well, that's not true in the case of AXELgo. It handles this just fine. You just drag it in here, and you can look and see it's added the files here. This is one of my tests. I tested a really long file name, make sure to handle it.
Yeah.
A couple other things, the dates in the past. I put some really weird dates in for these files to make sure it can handle that. So we'll just upload these 3 files just to see how it works.
And the idea is that we now don't have an indication that that was the last time this has been accessed. Like this date is not the last time it's been accessed. It was grabbed almost in a bubble and set in there with all its metadata intact.
Right. If we look at our dates here, they're kind of odd. Some of these are from January 1st, 2021. This one here's from 1989. I've got one up here from 2091. Just testing this thing to see what it's going to do with these weird circumstances. And it handled them all fine. It doesn't care what the metadata is. It just preserves it. So here we are. We've uploaded the three files, 0 folders. So these files are now split up. They've been encrypted with, I think it's 256-bit AES encryption now. And they're kind of sent out onto the cloud, onto AXEL's cloud. So we'll go back to our, we're going to be the attorney again. And we'll just update this here. So I've logged in here.
And by AXEL's cloud, you mean a fully encrypted place that, this information on AXEL's cloud. I want to kind of reiterate that so we don't just gloss over it. What you're saying is that this is very, very well protected space in the ether out there that AXEL owns.
Yeah. This is using AES encryption, and it's all, it's a bunch of servers out there on their network. So it exists in many different places, and there's built-in redundancy. It's probably in 5 or 10 places at once. Each piece exists in 5 or 10 different places. And the encryption is very, very secure. I mean, this is technology that the Pentagon uses to encrypt their systems. I was a consultant for the Pentagon for many years, and this is what they use. So,
well, and I guess I also want to reiterate, in case we didn't say it, that we're not talking about one entire file sitting on a computer somewhere. These have been broken into pieces and distributed. And I think Thomas, in an interview with me one time, used the idea that if someone breaks in, they break into your house and all your furniture is in pieces. So they can't steal it's impossible to steal your furniture at that point.
That's right. And this is a good way to look at this is the way we all thought the cloud was going to work. When we first started talking about cloud storage, decades ago, the idea is that it's just this ether out there. But recently we've seen that it's just someone else's computer. You've probably seen the saying, there is no cloud, it's just somebody else's computer.
It's just somebody, it's Amazon's computers somewhere. Yeah,
really is the cloud. I mean, it's out there dispersed. So okay. So here we are back as the attorney, and there's our Lawyerist live demo secure fetch. One of the things it does, it collects a certificate that shows you when it was uploaded, how big it was, what the files were, and the 3 creation dates, as well as the 3 types of hash for the file itself. So you can always tell if it's been modified internally too.
And to explain that, what that means is that all the information inside that file is run through a hash generator. And if something is different, each time that file is run through that same hash generator, you'll get the same set of numbers, letters, and what have you there. But if something, even the smallest thing, has changed, it'll be a vastly different hash set.
That's exactly right. These algorithms are kind of a circular algorithm that compute down to every last bit. Mm-hmm. So if you change literally 1 bit in the file, your hashes are completely different. So, and it does MD5, SHA-1, and a SHA-3 512, which are all industry standard, at least in forensics and cryptography. These are standard algorithms, so you can easily check those. So, I mean, here you can download the certificate to keep it as part of your records, so you have all this information for your case.
Okay.
If we go back here, we can actually download the data. We'll go ahead and do that. And it tells you you have to use the desktop app, which we're fine with. Go ahead and launch it. And it's all very simple. You know, there's not a screen full of buttons and switches and controls like you'd see in the majority of the forensic tools that are out there.
Right.
This is really written to be foolproof, but you know, they're always inventing better fools, but this is pretty easy to use.
Right. Well, there's one thing we're trying to do, basically. It's good. Go get information, secure that metadata, get it securely from one place to another.
Yeah. How complicated could it be? But other systems have made it pretty complicated. Let's see. We'll just create a folder here for this. I've done this a few times already. We'll call it returned 4 now. And we'll just save it into that folder. It does the download. And we'll show the folder.
Okay, that's convenient.
Get this out of the way. And we got to turn on got to view our information here, our metadata. Access, there we are. So we'll turn on our metadata view here. I really should do that for all my folders. All right, so there we see our dates in the past file. It still has its 1989 date on all 3, and all the metadata is preserved. And so this is the information about the information that can be very important to your case, whether it's a divorce case, a patent infringement case, a criminal case. This is important to all of them. And I've been involved in many cases where this was the core of the evidence. You know, when was this done? In a patent case, that's very important. You know, that's what your case is based on. So it all gets preserved, and you can put these files into your review platform or send them on to the court, and you have your metadata preserved.
Well, and that keeps somebody from being able to say, well, obviously, you know, it has a date modified of yesterday because I sent it to you yesterday. You can kind of almost demand that preservation here and use that as evidence.
Right, right. And if you were to say that, this file was modified yesterday because that's when I sent it to you, well, that, in a lot of cases and a lot of perspectives, that amounts to spoliation.
Right.
You've wiped off the gun at that point,
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and that date is something about Windows. Well, all of them really. Once you change that date, it's paramount to having overwritten what was there. So you can't just go back and unchange it. It really is gone.
Right. We don't have a versioning record of that previously. And so I guess that kind of lends the question. I assume this works on for files that are Mac based, for all the normal files that we're going to be moving from one place to another.
Yes, yes, absolutely. It'll preserve the metadata, for any of the systems you collect from. So
okay. And does AXEL, the desktop application, that works on a Mac as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. It's all universal. I won't speak to the languages it's written in and the coding. That's someone else's job. But yeah, it certainly does run on the Mac.
Okay. Okay. Great. Well, Rob, this is very helpful. And thank you for going into a lot of the background on why we need this. I think that's a lot of the information here is why are we using secure fetch in the first place? But just to reiterate, it's a way of sending out a link, essentially a place where your client, opposing counsel, a custodian, or somebody like that can drop their files into one of those drag and drop areas, and it comes to you. And if you turn on that secure the metadata or maintain the metadata tick box, then it'll maintain that metadata when it comes to you.
Yes, absolutely. And it's a forensically secure way to go out and collect evidentiary data off a computer. And it's something that I wish I had 20 years ago, because a lot of times sending someone out to collect this data just doesn't make sense when you have a tool like this. And for the most part, this tool didn't exist until recently.
Right, right. Well, Rob, once again, thank you for being with us. And if people want to know more about AXELgo, their secure fetch, and their metadata, they can go to go.axel.network, and they can get a tour and a lot of information there. Thank you, Rob.
Absolutely. All right. Glad to be here.